You can find his ongoing essays and podcasts at the Children of Job Substack, and it is a pleasure to have him back, the disinformation deconstructor, social engineering informer, and cognitive dissident, Jasun Horsley. Welcome back.
So while you were doing that frenetic intro, Greg, I was looking in the background and I saw what looked like Cthulhu, definitely an owl, and an inverted pentagram. So you definitely got my paranoid spidey sense tingling. So congratulations.
Well, this is an audio-only show, so it's kind of hard for the audience to know what you're talking about, but what you interpret as Cthulhu is simply an octopus from an artist in San Diego, a sea creature. And the pentagram, I'm not sure. Are you looking at the carpet that I have?
No, behind the owl there's an inverted pentagram.
Behind the owl?
Yeah, the owl behind her side.
Over here?
Yeah.
Oh, you're looking at a pillow, I think, that has a Higherside Chats logo on it, which shows three impossible objects. One has a UFO, one has a pentagram, and one has the eye and the pyramid, because those are the three pillars of the topics we talk about. It's a little hard to express what a show would be about in symbols. If you think those symbols are evil, then by default, the show is evil. But this is what we talk about. So this happens a lot to me. It's hard to represent these things without endorsing these things or somehow seeming spooky. But if someone was to look online in the sea of endless entertainment options and try to find something that they wanted to digest, these are ways we convey what they are, what the show's about.
Didn't mean to put you on the defensive right away there, Greg. It was just my way of getting the ball rolling.
Hey, I was ready for it. And again, it's audio only. So this is kind of like, in my head, I'm running two tracks. One, I want to explain what you're saying. And two, I'm like, the audience doesn't even know what we're talking about. But that is a great example of how your skepticism, your innate skepticism and guardedness leads you to conclusions that are wrong. That's not Cthulhu. That's just an octopus.
Well, okay, so now we're definitely getting to the meat and potatoes. They're not necessarily wrong, though. I mean, that is an inverted pentagram, and it does signify satanic principles. So using it for a logo is questionable. The owl, that's an ancient symbol of witchcraft.
Of wisdom.
Consciously or not, you've chosen to have an ancient symbol of dark witchcraft even. And then the octopus, I agree, octopus is a beautiful creature, so maybe that was a bit of a reach, but it does look a bit Cthulhonic or chthonic. So, yeah.
Let's talk about the pentagram. So this is common. People say it's inverted. Well, in my limited knowledge of the occult, pentagrams are typically drawn as portals in rituals that would be on the ground. So what is upside down? What is inverted when you're looking at something placed on the ground? I'm also not an artist. So when I commission an artist to draw a logo for me, I say, draw a UFO, an eye in the pyramid, and a pentagram, because the pentagram symbolizes the occult. Now, the artist happened to draw it in that orientation. I didn't want to spend money on a revision, so it is what it is. But I think this obsession with orientation is a little silly because, as I said, the usefulness of the pentagram is often drawn on the surface of a floor. So you could walk around it in any way. And orientation is just based on your observation. You want me to turn the pillow around so it's not inverted and then it will look up right side up?
I'm not particularly sensitive to it. It's not a personal complaint. But your explanation, frankly, was a bit weak because, yeah, sometimes it's on the floor, so that's valid. But if it's not on the floor, if it's on the wall or a vertical surface, or in this case a pillow, then it does have an orientation. And then, secondly, since you do a show and have done it for many years that takes very seriously, I presume, the power of symbols, then why don't you take them equally seriously? Like there are people who believe, and I'm kind of on the fence here, because I haven't thought about it in a long time, but there certainly are people that believe that a symbol has innate power and that it could trigger certain psychological responses in consciousness. So as I understand it, the inverted pentagram symbolizes is satanic symbol because it symbolizes matter over spirit. If it's right way up, then that one point symbolizes the spirit being dominant over matter, and then you invert it, it's matter over spirit. That's my understanding. So it's possible that, let's say, a victim of satanic ritual abuse would see that symbol and be triggered into some sort of program response. That's something I would think that you'd want to be aware of, considering the fields that you work in. I mean, you might really scare off a whole bunch of people.
Well, it's possible, but I don't really cater to, not to sound rude, the lowest common denominator. Like, I can't help if someone's triggered by something that is said or viewed on the clips. I mean, I should just put nothing back there because something could trigger a person. So that's a little bit silly. But I just wanted to say about what you said, matter over spirit. Now, I've never heard that description, but I would say that the content of the show itself is clearly not endorsing a matter over spirit perspective. And also, I said the answer is twofold. One, I think the orientation argument is a little silly. But two, these are symbols the show is about. So even if you take a nefarious interpretation of the symbol, well, the show is about nefarious people with nefarious intent affecting our lives. So I still think it plays and it works. And also, I just wanted to say the owl, because we didn't really touch on that. I think the owl is a symbol of wisdom. Now, if you say it's witchcraft, also doesn't really bother me. The reason there's a few owls on my bookshelf is because my buddies who are more conventional thinkers think it's funny to gift me owls. It's just a thing that started happening. One guy goes to TJ, gets me an owl. Another guy does it from Thailand. I have owls from around the world from my friends' trips because they like to fill up my space with things that they think are silly. And it just became a fun expression of friendship. And so I display them because I like my friends.
Well, I wonder if this is the best place to start, because I'm not going to back down, Greg. So if we just keep on this subject, we might never get to Prisoner Infinity. And so, I mean, we can stay on it if you want. It certainly is a microcosm of something, but I don't want this whole show to be about me challenging you and criticizing your choices. I think your listeners objected to me pretty strongly the last time. So,
well, I just think this is fun. That's why I wanted to have you back. It is rare to have someone back so soon, but I have nothing to hide. I'm very comfortable in my positions. I'm open to criticism.
Okay.
And
let's make it more general then, or it'll be still about you. Like I said, I'm not likely to change my view of the use of symbols and the need for care in that. And frankly, I think it's irresponsible to talk about lowest common denominator when you're referring to survivors of satanic ritual abuse or occult ritual abuse on the one hand, and then having a satanic symbol as one of your primary symbols. I think that sounds pretty irresponsible to me. And I had a more general point, though, that this doesn't mean that therefore I think you're not what you say you are, or, oh my God, the Higherside Chats is a honey trap, because a lot of this stuff is unconscious. I mean, that last email I sent you about the superculture has to do with how the values and the images and the symbols and the narratives trickle down from what I call the superculture into and as the culture that we identify and that we inhabit consciously. That the culture at large is a byproduct of this superculture. So then, I mean, you could be right about the owls. I'm on the fence. That's just been my experience and my understanding of that symbol. Doesn't mean that, it freaks me out if somebody has an owl on its own. It's just in the context of other symbols and talking about the occult. But so the general point is that somebody doesn't have to be a shill or consciously doing something that is dark or destructive or malevolent to be co-opted without realizing it. Like you say, all your friends buy you these owls, so you go along with it, but maybe your friends are being manipulated and controlled or just culturally indoctrinated in such a way right? You must be very open to the idea that the culture at large isn't as benign as we think it is. We adopt symbols or images or movies or icons that we think are harmless, but they're not, right? So that's the larger context. And what I talk about responsibility, that's been very much my developmental curve as a writer, a disseminator of information and ideas, is having to become more and more conscientious and discerning about what I'm advocating. Like my early books, which we've never talked about, and I don't care to talk about them particularly except in this context. I had the name of Aeolus Cephas, and they were occultism in a certain sense. They're paranoid awareness. They were written in a certain sense, in a certain impartial way, where I wasn't directly advocating these ideas. I was just saying, what if? But nonetheless, I was basically resting many of my models for understanding the world on sources that I now consider wholly unreliable, such as Whitley Strieber, who maybe we'll get to today eventually, Carlos Castaneda, John Keel, Jack Valley, Kenneth Grant, Aleister Crowley. The list is quite a long one. Almost all of them I now consider to be either conscious disinformation agents or people who have been naively have allowed themselves to be co-opted because of naivete. So I myself was, I actually tried to completely redact the second Aeolus Cephas book because I went further out on this dodgy limb with that one, and I asked my publishers just to destroy them all. And that's something I'm kind of opposed to on principle. I don't think one should try and erase one's past, but I just felt that book was too irresponsible to really want it to be out there.
Well, see, I'm seeing contradictions in you, or I feel like it's a little unfair for you to criticize what I think is a small thing, a symbol and a logo that really does express this is what the show is about. And you wrote an entire book about things you think are negative and deceptive. And yeah, you had an evolution, but I don't think you show a lot of grace for people who are on their journeys and maybe just haven't reached this place. You have a kind of a superiority complex because you're like, I'm at the end of the race. This is the absolute truth. I have a monopoly on it. And anyone who is further back in their own personal journey must be a deceptive agent because like they must have bad motives, as opposed to yourself, who is really just trying to navigate reality, digging into different things, trying on different hats, and then ultimately putting those hats down and making more progress towards your ultimate worldview. Like, should we not all be allowed the same process? And if you judge us at individual points in that process, is it absolutely fair to make the kind of general conclusions you make about people?
Well, you misrepresented me there, Greg, because I was very clear that that was my leading point, that I don't equate irresponsible adopting of dodgy narratives and beliefs and the rest of it with being a shill. So that's the first point. I mean, that was your main point, and I made it clear that I'm not doing that. As to being too hard on, let's say, or unfair with people who aren't shilling, who are just trying things on, as you put it, and getting it wrong. I mean, that's a case-by-case basis. Like, if that's your feeling with me personally, then that's one thing, but you're making it a broader case. Now, I've been working with individuals and in groups, or with groups, for years, for even a decade or more, and sometimes I get complaints, but mostly I've been effective, I think, in terms of measuring the degree of ruthlessness or just bluntness, honesty. And frankly, that's what I would have liked, or that's what I like now, and what I would have benefited from back then. So I'm very opposed to kind of this whole culture of being nice, of being polite, of being considerate, of taking people's feelings too much into account. I think that's a massive psyop in itself. It's more.
But hold on, sorry. That's what you wanted me to do with the symbol. You wanted me to take other people's feelings into account, and
No.
this might be triggering to someone. Well, I can't control what's triggering to other people. I'm casting a show out onto the damn internet. There's tens of thousands of people listening.
I'm not talking about feelings. If somebody's a victim of ritual abuse and you trigger them into some sort of altar and and they suicide or something. Obviously, I'm going to an extreme example. I'm not really suggesting that could happen, but just that's very different from feelings. But I take your point. So then, even if we separate it from the possible consequences of irresponsibly promoting beliefs, narratives, images, symbols, if we take away the consequences, or considering those consequences, because as a general principle, I tend to agree, we can't really, what's the word I'm looking for? We can't foresee anyway the results of what we do. But is this truly representative of what we're doing, or is this truly an accurate portrayal of our values? So to me, the pentagram is, yeah, your show isn't all about satanic stuff, right? So it's
Correct.
a bit more than just. It seems like it's become a logo, a Higherside Chats logo. So that's not quite the same as this is the content. This is more like, this is what you represent, your values. That's at least how I interpret it.
Well, what I said was these are the three pillars that most broadly can define what the show is about: conspiracy, paranormal or ufology, and the occult. So they just represent the content of the show in general. Can you believe it, people? A video clip and a peek into how that sweet THC sausage is made. For some people, I'm sure it's nice to put a face to the name, so I started making clips that are a little more YouTube friendly than the full show tends to be. Get the full show on any podcasting platform. I prefer to keep it audio only, so we have a more decentralized distribution for a controversial show, and also so I can edit out the ums and ahs and barking dogs and all the things that happen when a person records in their home environment. And then if you really like the show, you can sign up for THC Plus, and instead of 1 hour interviews, you get the full 2 hour interview for just $8. I think that's a better deal, more of a win-win than asking you to support the show by booking a therapy session or buying generic Viagra. It's getting weird out there, folks. So just go to the highersidechats.com or click the link at the top of any set of show notes, and all your wildest dreams will come true. All right? All right. The Higherside Chat Show.